Dove Moshe Litwin, everybody. So I'm going to be here today with Dove, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. We'll hit his workshop that he's going to be putting on for supervision, and hopefully a lot of other interesting, cool stuff. So, hey, Dove, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jonathan?
I can't
Thanks
complain.
for doing this.
Things are pretty good. It's nice to sit down with you.
Okay. Love to chat.
So, what's going on your end? So, you have this workshop going on. That's coming up in next month or this month. When
It's a
exactly is
couple
your
of
workshop
weeks.
on supervision?
Yeah, about 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
Okay. What are you gonna be covering in this workshop? What this is for clinicians, this is for the general population. Who you opening this up to?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, we're here to turn, actually, we're here to turn students into therapists. And these are people that, students that are, I call them students, but really they're people, we're aiming for people that have already some degree or certificate program in therapy, a psychotherapy course, uh, certificate or master's or even a bachelor's degree. And it's called advanced training. And the reason why I wanted to do this, and I'm very excited about this program, is because I've been a supervisor for, I don't know, about 9 years. And even before that, I've been supervising people until officially I got my certificate. But I've seen from the people that I've worked with that there is very much lacking in the basic program supervision that
Hmm.
people get in their coursework. To be a good therapist, you got to have an understanding of what you're doing, see the whole picture, be able to break open a session, to know what the process of therapy is and what your client can handle, to understand where the issues might be coming from. And books can teach you a lot, but they can't really do it for you when you're sitting inside, or they're lacking in a certain degree, when you're sitting in front of a client and you're asking yourself, okay, he said this or she said that. Where do I go with this? What does the client need right now? Should I just be straight with the client and tell the client how to make their life better or tell them where they're getting blocked? So, how do you make those decisions? This is an
Hmm.
advanced training program. We want the whoever's coming to the program to have some degree of experience with clients, but they're new.
Hmm.
They're new. They're starting out, and they're looking to develop themselves as a. When I say a therapist, it's like a vehicle for enabling change.
Hmm.
And a vehicle for enabling change is is like turning yourself into a different person. You can't be the same person that you were before the program with just a bunch of knowledge. You've got to really turn yourself into a vehicle for change, which means you've got to see things that other people don't see. I like to say, I was trying to think of an analogy that I could explain this.
Hmm.
And I know it doesn't sound like such a great analogy, but if you think about it, it's almost the intensity that needs to be had. Now, obviously, a therapist is not going to be intense with his client unless that's what the client exactly needs. But if you think of a wrestling match, and I'm not talking about the one
Oh,
that is
professional wrestling, got Hulk Hogan, all those guys.
but it's
Okay.
not to like
Okay.
maybe be a showman. It's like
Yeah.
the real stuff.
Hmm.
Now I'm not a wrestler, though I've heard about wrestling. But my sense of it, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but anyway, but the point is that my sense of it is that you got to know in boxing also where's the client going, what's happening, how do I have to see the past, present, and future. I have to know where that it's not the challenger, but where he's coming from, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, where he will move, what his
Hmm.
language is like, what his body language is like, and I have to know where to come in, how to come in. And here, I can't go to the weakest point and kill him, but have to go to the point where, and this is different than boxing and wrestling,
Yeah,
is I got to know where he is in this process of healing and what step I need to address in that process.
sure, sure.
Included in that is how to challenge. How to challenge. So many students say that they don't, that they're not going to challenge. They're here to help the client and send them away with a smile.
Like
Now,
overly compassionate, you'd say.
well, that's a piece of it,
Yeah, yeah.
but they see the role. It's more of a role. My role is to make the client feel good. Now, that's very holy and very noble, but you could make him feel good the way he's always been feeling good in fantasy land and not getting to his issues that are really going to help him grow and function in the way he needs to
Yeah,
function outside
yeah.
the room. Your job is not that he should leave your office smiling and then go back into his terrible, and you're just a band-aid and he'll stay in therapy
Mm.
for years and years. You
You know,
don't want that.
it's an interesting point you're making because, I've definitely experienced that also where there's like an aura within psychotherapy of and it's important, the validation, the compassion, the making people feel good, the nurturing aspects. And yet at the same time, all of the different founders of the different psychotherapies, like Carl Jung or Albert Ellis for cognitive therapy, these guys were very intimidating. People who sat down with Carl Jung, they would say, "You're sitting down knee to knee with the old man." That's definitely not, the image a lot of people have of therapists. And I guess I kind of wonder, would you say that's partially because most therapists are actually women, that there's a strong archetypally feminine flavor in therapy, and the masculine parts aren't necessarily so pronounced culturally.
Well, that's a good question. Look, every therapist has his own niche. When I studied, I remember a professor I had in my master's social work program, and this is just only one piece, it's not the whole answer. I have
Yeah.
another piece I think that contributes, but it's an excellent question, Jonathan. Um, it was in a community organization class, and he had to develop lay leadership. Well, developing lay leadership is to get them to have a mission and decide how they're going to go about getting that mission of theirs. But it's the lay leadership that runs it, and you help the lay leadership develop.
Mm.
Okay, but that's beside the point. That was what the class was about. And he said, I had a student, he said, that went to my highest contributor and said to him, fork up the money, guy. You got to give the money now. And he wanted to punch him. I'm like, who did you send me? Like, who is this student? What chutzpah has the audacity to come at me like that?
Mm.
And what the professor was saying, he says, I do that all the time, but I get away with it because it's
Uh-huh.
my personality. It's how he perceives me, and each person is different. I
Mm.
could do it. I do it in a way where he enjoys it. The contributor likes it. The contributor looks for it. He needs me to do that for him. He feels connected with me in that way. But another person who uses the same words, it won't be the same. It'll
Mm.
just be chutzpahdik. You can't follow your supervisor's words. You've got to find your own language as well. That's one answer.
Mm.
So yes, it can work for certain great masters, but it doesn't work for all the great masters that at that time. You have to use your personality, and you have to know how you can get away with it, where the client just doesn't want to leave the room, because if the client just drops therapy, then you don't have a client, even though your um, methods are noble. That's one piece.
Yeah.
The other piece, I think, is I don't know if we call it cultural, environmental, biological. I think it's all together. Is that we live in a different generation. Every like 6 years, maybe even 5, 6 years, the generation changes. We're a much weaker generation. We just have to look at all the conveniences that are out there. And people are not willing, people are weak minded. They used to say it's generation of feathers, and now it's like the generation of like thin air. You say Buddha somebody and he jumps, or you
Mm.
can't say that to me. And so it's very delicate. People are willing to try growing, but if you hit them too hard, they're going to crumble. because that's what the generation is. It's a weak generation,
Hmm.
and a lot
Hmm.
of reasons. A lot of reasons. Situation in the world. People are used to much more convenient things in their life, uh, and they're used to being pampered more. There's more hasagot.
Yeah.
Hasagot are
Yeah.
things that they want out of life, and they, even if they don't have, they see people that do have, and that makes a person weak. I can't be satisfied just with my cow and my donkey and my horse, and the four walls and a roof over my head that doesn't have the wind, the rain coming in. So
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
definitely weaker, and they need to feel safe in the therapy room before they can do the work that they need to do.
Would you think of therapy as the work being to kind of defragilize folks? I mean, the way that you're kind of spelling it out is, well, like, thank God the world's a heck of a lot safer, but life sure packs a wall up, and not being able to bear those burdens. I mean, that's a serious deficit, for lack of a better term. I mean, how would you conceptualize therapy, especially within the supervision model that you're working with?
Yeah, well, I think that you're right, Yonasan. That a great part of the work is to defragilize. I think it's a great way of putting a label to it. But in defragilizing, there's a lot of pieces, a
Mm,
lot of pieces, and that's why the I want to train in this training program. I want to train students. I call them students once again, but they just finished their program. They have a few clients, and they want more because what they had in supervision was not enough
mm,
to change their whole mahut, their identification, their insights to the outsides of what I need to do, not only in the seicha, but in the emotional state, how I see the whole picture. So the therapist is defragilizing the client, but he's got so many pieces going on at the same time in his head.
mm.
And to really do this properly, what happens is over time, over with experience, you will instinctively know where to go, and all the pieces will come together in a single moment. Another good marshal, I think, is I learned on an automatic car.
Oh, really? Okay.
But my father had a manual car, and it's cool to drive a
I had a
manual
manual. I
car.
learned on the manual. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you
Yeah.
learned a
Yeah.
manual.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
a real man, Jonathan. you're, you're a man among men. You're a man among men. It's true. That's great. That's most people won't go
Mm,
that way because why? It's easier. Automatic is easier. Anyway, but that's besides the point.
yeah.
But when you're driving manual, your two hands, one hand on the gear, um, one hand on the steering wheel, one hand on the accelerator, one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the clutch, and your eyes have to be on the road. So you have four things going on at the same time: your hand, your right hand, your left hand, your right foot, your left foot, and your eyes
You're
have to be
dancing. Manual's
knowing what's going
dancing.
on.
Yeah.
And when you imagine a guy starting out, and this is the therapist, that's the driver, and he's starting out. Okay, now have you ever learned? You learned right away. I learned second. But I
Mm.
was doing automatic, and everything's easy. Okay, do I change gears? The steering. Oh, my hands on the steering wheel. Okay, how do I keep the car going straight? How much acceleration do I need in order not to conk out the car? And how do I? Okay, my left foot has to release on the clutch, and
When you're on
whoa,
when you're on an
my eyes, there's a
incline.
car coming at me. Oh
Yeah.
no, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. The incline when you're at a stop sign, you kind of fall back a little bit.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
My father was great. He said, you passed the test. I grew up in Montreal. He says, you
Mm.
passed the test when we're going to go on the top of Mount Royal. You know, Mount Royal, Montreal
Okay.
is called Mount Royal.
Okay.
And ever since I was a kid, that was the scariest hill in the world because your car is like going like this and there's a red light at the top. Now, when the red light turns green, if you don't move fast, your car is going to go backwards into the guy in back of you. He
Right.
says, if you pass that test at the end of our course that my father taught me, he
Yeah.
said, you passed. I said, Dad, what if I fail? Oh, no.
Then you're going to have a big bill.
Big bill. So that's it. A therapist doesn't want to fail.
Mm.
And he's doing work with a client. He doesn't want to go backwards and he doesn't want to hurt the client. And therapy has a bad rap today.
Mm.
Very, very bad rap because everyone under the sun wants to become a therapist. Why? Why do I want to give therapy? Because they like to help people. They feel that they have what to give. They themselves have gone through different things in their life, but they're not, they're giving their views on the world. And therapy now has a bad rap because they don't get trained properly. Um, they're shooting from the hip of
Mm.
what they think the client needs to hear. And you hear people, let's say, getting divorced because their therapist told them they should get divorced,
Right.
or they should take on this new job because the therapist said they should take on this new job, or and therapists become the person that is guiding, and sometimes even turns into coaching. And you have to be very careful. Your job is not to take over a client's life. Your job is to enable a client to be the best he could be and make choices that he wants to make.
Mm.
And even if he's making a choice that you disagree with, this might be a step in his process of him finding himself and helping him is that the word, defragilizing?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Defragilizing himself. But there's so many pieces that go into it, and you have to think of like a wrestling match. It's not wrestling as you're. Excuse me, my light came out. It's not wrestling like you're going against the person, but you're so in. It's wrestling in the sense that you're so in tune with his every move,
Mm.
and you know his past, present, and future. You know his strengths. You know his weaknesses, and in a flash, you're reacting with your body, with
Yeah.
your statements, with your even your the body. Do you lean into the client? Do you lean out of the client? How do you sit with a client? How do you assess what the client, how the client needs you to sit with him? Of course, in this, in every therapy, I think there's a piece of reparenting
Yeah.
that has to happen. So many things are going on that have to come together, and this training program is to not learn book material. It's to experience and uh, dissect what's going on in the client. There's a lot of, we're going to do role playing, we're going to
Mm.
do process recordings, deep process recordings, what the client is
Mm.
saying, what's not client saying, what's going on for you as a therapist, what's going on for the client. We're going to, have that role playing,
Yeah.
people getting answers, discussions. There's to see things that you haven't seen before. What the
Mm.
client can, what the client can't, how to challenge in a safe way, what to challenge, when you challenge.
It's gonna be like a
Uh,
significant group aspect to it then. I mean, in terms is that right
yeah,
or okay?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's part of the dynamics. We want to create dynamics that people are experiencing, and we want their views on what they're experiencing,
Mm.
both as the person who is leading the discussion or doing the therapy, and both as the ones that are listening to it. What does it feel like? What's going on for you? Um, is I remember I had a student way back. Um, it was in, not way back, but when I was first doing the supervision, I remember helping the student realize, like, uh, Mnuchin had a way of doing supervision,
Mm.
which the supervisee relationship models the therapist client. So that some of the questions I would ask the supervisee would be the type of questions that the therapist would ask the client. They wouldn't be doing therapy per se, but that structure of how to run a session and how to look at things and how to talk about things and how to get the client's input, or how the client's reacting. The supervisor is getting to experience that in the context of supervision.
Mm.
I mean, that's changing the supervisee into knowing what's supposed to happen in the room, knowing what the client is feeling when the supervisor asks a certain question, to develop the supervisee into the best he can become or she could become.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very dynamic experience. And when you really learn this, and I have 30 years experience in the social work field, and I've been studying people for years, not from books. Yes, I
Mm.
read books, but I've been studying more to develop a sixth sense of people and their personalities
Yeah.
and their reactions. And it's when you get it and when you feel it and you feel the success in your sessions, and success doesn't mean necessarily the client's getting better.
Mm. Mhm.
Success
Mhm.
means that you see the client moving. You see the client moving, thinking. Only the client is going to know when he's ready to move to the next step. And you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
force the client. You can nudge and push the pendulum a bit. But then some clients I have finish therapy in, let's say, 8 weeks. And some go on for years and years and years. That's not the average, but it's a process.
Yeah, yeah. There's a certain pragmatism the way you're describing your approach, and I guess that's, with a workshop with a wide sort of uh, array of therapists. There's a lot of different philosophies. Well, what's therapy? What's what's appropriate to reveal, not to reveal. How would you address these sort of things in the workshop that you're putting on?
Mhm. That's a great question. And that's why it's such a fundamental question you're asking, um, because students will ask me those types of questions and they're expecting to get an answer.
Hmm.
What I do is I'd say, what an interesting question. Uh, can you tell me what you're trying to ask me right now? Where's this question coming from? And inevitably, well, I could have just answered the question because it's a great question.
Yeah, yeah.
But me asking that question to the supervisee gets him to think. For every supervisee, believe it or not, Yonasan, the answer will be different. He
Yeah.
won't say because it happens in my therapy sessions. He won't necessarily say that.
Mm,
He might say that, but he might say something like, um, um, I have a hard time challenging clients, or I want to talk about I'm getting triggered by this particular client
hmm.
and I'm thinking about my own life,
Yeah.
or I really hate the client, um, or I really love the client and I feel close to the client and I want to really share what's on my mind. Can I share this stuff? Or actually, if I be really honest, I'm doing therapy on myself. So if I don't ask that question, I just answer the question, well, what do you do in this fundamental type of thing? How much do you share? How much do you not share? You know, I'm not providing a service. I'm not helping the client, or in this case, the supervisee, understand what's going on for him or
Hmm.
her
Hmm.
that will give him the knowledge of what he needs. Like I can answer and tell the client, yes, sometimes you share and sometimes you don't. These are the conditions where you do share. These are the conditions you don't share. Well, I just hit the tip of the iceberg for the supervisee, and I really
Hmm.
have not helped the supervisee become a good therapist because I haven't helped the supervisee understand what's going on behind the scenes for him to ask or her to ask
Mm.
that question.
You got road
Even
mapping
if
the
it's a
person
great
taking.
question, it's a
Yeah.
great question, but I never assume, and especially with your clients, you never assume that your your client understands what he's saying and that the client is coming from necessarily the most healthy places. So if you say, "How was your day
Mm.
today?" and the client says, as a therapist, "How was your day today?" Yeah, like every day. Oh, okay. Like every day. Okay. Or great. That was a great day. Okay. So a lot of students may say, "Good. I'm glad. That's wonderful. What was good about it?" or whatever. Or they go on to the next thing. Or what did you want to talk about today?
Mm.
But there's like what's happening. First of all, you have to know in general the way your client normally behaves, how your client normally comes in, what your client is wearing, how your client says great, and
Yeah.
why didn't he say good? Why didn't he think for a moment, say, let me think, how was my day today? Okay, more or less. It's okay. I'm okay. And then it gives that room for the therapist to say, sounds like you think about it. We want you, is this a place you'd like to look into some of the things that happened today?
Mm-hmm.
We want to give clients opportunities to go where they want to go.
Yeah.
If the client's not, and it's not a be all or end all for every time a client goes great or mamash, it was
Yeah.
incredible. I had an
Yeah.
incredible day. Do you want to talk about it? No, but okay, it's incredible. Like every day is incredible. Like, what's going on for the client? I don't know. Or the client says, you know, yeah, it was good. It was good.
Okay. So
We got
so
to
y-
read faces, body language. Not every good for every client means the same thing. And not every,
no.
how are you feeling? Sad. I'm depressed. Not every word depressed for every person means the same. It might mean something for you, it might mean different for the client. Now, of course, the client might not want to go there. The client has an agenda of what he wants to
Yeah.
cover. So you don't want to leave the client, you want to enable clients. When you take over the therapy, you're not enabling your client to do what he needs to do, even if he's not ready to go there, to where you think he should go. You might say, look,
Yeah.
we could look into this if you'd like, or we don't have to. It's up to you, but it sounds like there's a story behind your day.
So it sounds like in a
So,
sense like your supervision approach is you're trying to foster the clinician to take on personal responsibility, whatever their orientation is. That's they make that choice, but raising a an awareness for themselves, but then also raising an awareness for their client themselves. That sounds more like that's kind of sounds where you're
what do you
going with
mean?
it.
Help me understand what awareness for themselves in what context do you think?
Well, I mean, that seemed to be what you were describing in terms of, well, why are they making the choices they're making? That you're throwing their question back
Mhm.
on them as a way
Right.
of enabling them to take on responsibility. So if they're, using one model of therapy, they can do that as long as they're aware of what choices they are making and why.
Yeah, I think it's a little different than that.
Mm,
Yeah, it is exactly that, but it's even more
mm,
because taking on responsibility is like a value. It's something I need to do to be professional. I want to turn them into um, this is bad. There was an expression, I don't know where it came from, but a mean green eating machine,
okay.
I want to turn them into you breathe therapy. You breathe being a therapist, that
Mm,
you have to work hard to turn it off when you get home.
mm,
Is that your identification of who you are? It's not just about responsibility. Is that when I ask a question that creates awareness for the client, I want to create change for, I'm talking about the supervisee. I want to create change for the supervisee to think what's going on for me? Where am I holding? What's happening to me? Why is my supervisor asking me this question? What did he pick up in me? How did he pick up on me? And he has to look at all his pieces. Yes, to be responsible in this awareness, but
mm,
also to create change. And that takes effort. That takes.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good. It
It's
happens
a
in the
personal transformation, on a
exactly. The
professional
word is
level. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
transformation. We have it in other professions as well, where the professional has to transform himself into. I'm trying to think of what profession that is. That he eats, breathes, thinks like a therapist. He looks at the world and people he's coming in contact with in a therapeutic way. Looks at all the
Mm,
signals, picks
mm,
up all the nuances. Um, could challenge safely. Now, of course, outside the therapy room, like they do in the basic training, they do teach you do not be a therapist with your family or
yeah.
friends or your children. You're going to make them cuckoo. Um, and sometimes my clients would ask me, so your kids are messed up, aren't they? The reason they ask that
That's
is because
nice.
no kid wants to hear. So how did that make you feel? Now, of course, I hate saying that even with a client. How did that make you feel? Because they think you're just ticking off a
Yeah,
box, and it
placating
doesn't
or
sound
yeah, yeah,
sincere
yeah.
enough, right?
So we
So
have
we
like
don't want
a
to do that. We don't want to do that with our kids.
yeah. So
But
we have
we
about
will.
we have a couple just to, no, we have a couple minutes here left. I just wanted to like make sure we covered that this is a one-off workshop or this is going to be a continuous workshop. What's the structure? What are people gonna what should people expect to run into with this workshop specifically?
That's a good question as well. Well, first of all, we're going to have an open house.
Okay.
Just to introduce, it's no cost to anybody, just to see
Mm.
who's coming, just to see what it's about, to meet the people. Lena Shore, the administrator of the organization, the place, will be there to introduce the place. It's
Mm.
an opportunity for new therapists to come see what goes on behind all the advertisements, to see the place up front, to see the homey feeling, to
Okay.
meet Lena as well, and to find out what is this program supposed to be like. From my perspective, I'm going to actually start my work right away.
Mm.
I'm not just going to read off and say what's going to happen. What I
Okay.
am going to do is create input. Now, when people come to a new group, they sometimes don't necessarily want to participate, and they don't have to. You can participate if you want, but I
Mm.
will give people options. Where are you coming from? What's going on for you? What have you experienced? What do you need? Because we want to address the work based on what people need. So it is an ongoing um, thing, an ongoing workshop once a week, training program once a week. We're gonna have
Okay.
one for men, one for women.
Okay.
We'll figure out what's a doable amount of time. It might be 4 months, it might be
Mm.
5 months till the end,
Okay.
and then we'll start a new group after that.
Okay, so this is really kicking off a broader project. So this is a taster. People come in, see what you're about, and then going from there to join these more
Yeah.
focused groups.
Right.
Okay.
And the price also will depend on how many people are joining the group. The more people, the more we can afford to lower
Yeah, yeah.
the training program. But I think it's also an opportunity for young therapists because I remember when I started, there is not many forums, places to go
Mm.
where you're with other therapists, where you're together with them, where you're talking about your clients, where you're growing together in a group, and where you have a place actually to do your therapy with other people as well. And there's
Yeah.
opportunity to join the place as well, and to join the different opportunities, groups, and other things that go on at the place in the future.
Awesome.
So it's an opportunity for people to meet other people and really get
Cool. The
started.
social element also. Yeah,
And
making friends.
I want to really, really reiterate to therapists, I think they know it. New
Mm.
therapists know it. I'm sitting with a client and I really don't know what to say. It is so interesting, so I don't know how much time we have. Just want to say this
Yeah, yeah.
point.
Yeah, then
I,
we'll
I
end on this point.
Googled, I Googled good therapists and bad therapists. And so what came out. It's fascinating how they dramatize bad therapists, and what some of the masters say what a good therapist
Yeah.
is. And a good therapist is somewhat along the lines that we're talking about right now. And the bad therapists are ones that are saying, you'll see it. You just Google it
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
see
yeah, yeah, yeah.
a mock session, which is so hysterical. Some of these things that they're mocking, but
Yeah.
that's what it is. We don't want to give therapy a bad name because that
Mm.
is chaval. Because people think they come to therapy only when it's a last resort and I messed up. No, it's a first resort. You
It's
come
first
to
line
therapy
defense.
is the first line. You want to make your life better and there's something blocking you. You want to start a marriage, you want to find out what are your blocks, what's going on. It's not because you need help, it's because you want to be a better person, you want to grow, you want to have a journey, what's happening inside you.
Mm.
So you
So,
can navigate and be the best husband or the best wife that you want to be. Or go through, let's say you're an adolescent. You want to, set your feet stable enough that when you go into the next stage of life, which is a very big shift
mm.
into becoming an adult, where do I go with this? And how do I shift? And it's just like I tell people with crawling, I don't know these things, but developmental specialists in infant growing says you have to go through the crawling stage in order to be able to be healthy. If you skip this crawling stage and you just go to walking, then there's something missing in your development. You
Yeah.
needed that wherewithal and skill to be able to force kids to crawl and not just go to standing. Uh, Whether it's true or not true, but I like the
The
muscle.
idea,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But here also, you want to make sure, a client wants to make sure he's doing the best in that stage of life before he goes on to the next stage of life, because your body changes, your mind changes, your attitudes change, and you need the skills in one stage of the development to move on to the next stage of
Yeah.
development.
Again, that
There's so
personal.
many things that are built upon mounds and mounds and mounds that start from the day you were born, that you perceive the world, that a client perceives the world in a certain way,
Mm.
and it just compounds himself, and he doesn't know what subconscious message he was sulfig, he was like a sponge for, and that he's basing his life and his attitudes and the way he greets the world in the future based on those attitudes that
Yeah.
he developed subconsciously as a kid, because the kid doesn't have the intellectual ability to understand what's going on for him, but he feels and he understands what's happening
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
him, and he reacts when he goes to school and when he goes to interacts with people. It's all based on how he perceived what his role is in this life, who he is. There's different stages of development that a client sees. Who am I? They ask themselves,
Mm.
"Who am I?" And when he's young, what's my identity? Where do I belong? People growing up, kids growing up, they also in our dynamic with their family, and they
Yeah.
choose who they are based on what keeps them safe, what keeps the family safe, what keeps the arguments quiet. Sometimes they don't do that. They do the opposite. They rebel, and they don't even know why they're rebelling, but there's a reason.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
on to the world having an identity of who they are, and they're getting into trouble, and they say, I'm not happy the way I am, and I'm not successful, I'm not motivated, and I'm just an angry person. Or I don't even have to be angry, I'm just not everything I could be. So
Mm.
we want to encourage clients to come to therapy in order to have that journey to be the best person they could
Yeah.
be, and be able to grow and achieve in this world what they want to achieve. And for that to happen, a therapist cannot be just somebody who took a certificate program or a master's
Right.
of social work,
Right.
because we're going to give bad name to therapy. It's already out there. People, bunning educators, they don't want to send to therapy
Right.
necessarily because they're telling you things that are stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not what so not
Beautiful.
every therapist, but therapists have to get trained properly.
Beautiful.
And
You know,
that's what the
that's
advanced training program is about.
beautiful. Beautiful. So you know what? That's probably a good place to. It's a good point to end on. And sounds like an exciting workshop. And I wish you a lot of success. And well, maybe we'll have to touch base to hear how things are
Yeah,
developing. So it was good
perfect.
talking with you.
So
And
thanks for your time.
all
Appreciate you
right,
doing this.
take care.
Bye bye.